Hello, all. Welcome back to Not Just Lessons from Our Animals. I'm Emma. I am an animal communicator, healer, and teacher. I'm a guide for humans back to their authentic self. I am a messenger for Mama G and a conduit for the divine. And today is going to be a non-animal related uh, episode. However, likely there is, you may have received a message like this from your animal. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I look a little bit wild because I am getting ready to head out to the barn. And I woke up this morning with this topic, with this message. And so I wanted to get this recorded before I left so that, listening to the nudges, listening to the pings, listening to the messages that come through from our guides, whomever they might be, I find to be really important because when we don't listen, that's when things start to get louder and louder. And honestly, I don't want that. So, so here we are. Um, and the topic that we're talking about today is essentially dealing with disappointment. Maybe I'll come up with a better title for it, but that kind of actually feels really relevant. I like to be really intentional with my words, and dealing with is not something I would normally say about moving through a lesson or something. And sometimes that's what it feels like, right? Sometimes it feels like these are all things that I don't to necessarily say. Sometimes it is figuring it out. Sometimes it is dealing with something. Sometimes it is um, a should, right? And so I want to talk about this disappointment because it's something I have walked through and really in some ways have been walking through in a lot of different aspects over the past many years. First with not knowing where to move. When I moved from California up to Oregon, which is before anybody from Oregon's like, how dare you from California? Um, I grew up in Oregon, which is why I have that like deep-seated, it's like such a conditioning from childhood to like automatically hate people from California, which is just so wild. It's so wild, and that could be an episode all on its own. It's unhelpful and it's unhealthy and it's so many things. And so, and yet you can see I still have it like condition, like it's still there. Um, it's just wild. It's wild how deep things can get to, right? How from childhood you can grab onto something, whether it's a belief or it's an understanding, it's a perception, it's a way of being, it's a description or whatever the thing is, a definition for something, and it's the truth, right? And it you may know in your adulthood like that is not true or that is not real, and yet it can still like you can still have um that like initial reaction to go towards that being the this the description, the truth, the whatever. And it's such a great time to like take a moment to understand um what is at play, right? Like what is coming to the surface and why, right? So anyway, not knowing, I moved to Oregon uh for, with the thought, the understanding of I'm going to start my business and I will be there for a few months. And then by then I'll know where to go next. Like I will move there with the agreement, if you will. Maybe it was a one-sided agreement with my guides that, yeah, okay, great. Like I'll go there, get settled, like reset after being in corporate America and whatnot. And then, okay, sorry. That was weird with um the sun's in my face. And then, by then, like I will be told and shown where to go next. And like I will go there. And I even did things like astrocartography, like all these things. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna know it's gonna be great, like all these things. We're almost 6 years into it, and I still am not super clear where to go. So that's been one thing. My business is definitely not thriving and in the place where I expected it to be at this point. And there's so much really wrapped up in that, right? When you are self-employed, when you're an entrepreneur, when you are someone who's giving of themselves and their gifts, things can get so wrapped up in that, which is not always healthy and yet is like also part of it, right? That's just like, that is just kind of part of it. And so that's been another thing that has been like very up and down. There's been partnerships that either, went well and then not well, or didn't get quite off the ground, or, whatever the thing is. And there's been this like opportunity for the past 6 months that's been very up and down also for me. And yesterday was like one of those like, okay, it's happening, and then find out it's not, or not yet. It's like always a not yet. And so I was like very much in the feelings of it all, even though I was doing all that I could to really detach from the process and sort of protect myself from the up and down, since it had been happening in some instances, right, of like what I just said, of different experiences or situations, has been happening for years. So I can see the pattern. That's another part of it, which I think we'll end up talking about after this. And so, even though I did the things, I still was in the feels of like the disappointment of it all. And so, the first thing I really want to talk about is why it's so important to understand yourself, like yourself, your intuition, so that you can give to yourself in those moments. So here's the thing. This is not going to be like, do this when you're disappointed, because that one thing is likely not going, it could be, but it may not be the thing that you are needing in order to be supported and feel supported in that moment. And so, why being able to tune into ourselves, being able to check in with ourselves, knowing ourselves deeply can then help us in coping in a healthy way with life, right? Just with life, period. Because there's going to be different things that you will be needing or will be supportive for you, depending on the situation, depending on the disappointment, depending on potentially like your menstrual cycle, or the time of year, or who you're around, your relationships. And so understanding yourself deeply is like such a big part of this. And so, one way, right, that might be really helpful is for some people talking it out and like really being able to just like vent, or being able to just like externally process, right? So, from a human design perspective, if you're somebody who has a defined identity center or defined G center, which is the diamond in the center of your chart, if it's colored in, you're likely one of those people that really prefers or finds clarity and potentially peace through externally processing. And it's so important for you, if you are one of those people, that you're setting whoever you are externally processing with up for success. So you are telling them, hey, I need a sounding board. I am not looking for a conversation. I'm not looking for solutions. I'm not looking to fix this. I'm currently looking to process. And if, like, are you available for that? Because just because that's what you need, and this is the person that you feel called to, they get to say yes or no. They get to say, I am not available for that right now, because it doesn't matter why. They might be, they might not be. And so you stating what you need and allowing them to say yes or no to that is like the first step to that being successful. And if you're like, I don't have anybody in my life that's like that, then potentially you might talk out loud to yourself. You might record it on like a voice memo and then play it back to yourself. And while you're listening to yourself talk, you might find clarity in that way. And so there's lots of different ways you can go about it. But if you're an external processor, awesome. Just like understand that about yourself and then also set the scene to benefit you. If you're not, right? If you're not an external processor, potentially you have an undefined identity center, like myself, then externally processing is likely not going to be the thing that feels really supportive to you, you might get to that point at some point, but like at first, you just need to be with yourself to just sort through all the things, sort through the feelings, sort through the thoughts, sort through the whatever the thing is, right? And so allow that to be your truth. And if somebody's like, but you need to talk about it, say, respectfully, you don't get to tell me what to do. You don't get to tell me what's best for me because I am me, and therefore I get to decide for me. And so allow yourself to give to yourself and also take whatever it is that you need in order to feel supported in that moment. And if you're like, I can't in the moment allow myself to do whatever I need to do because of this responsibility or that responsibility or this situation or whatever the thing is, then do what you can, right? If you are wanting to be alone and you are unable to be alone because you have roommates or because you have kids or because of whatever the thing is, then what is it that you can do in the moment that is the next best thing, right? If we can't have the first best thing, what's the next best thing? And if we can't have that, then we just keep going down the list until there is something that we can do for ourselves in that moment, which simply might be putting one hand on our heart, one hand on our belly, closing our eyes and taking 3 deep breaths. That is massive for our nervous system, right? Just taking deep breaths and allowing ourselves to just simply like nourish our own nervous system. Maybe it's screaming, right? You scream into a pillow, you scream in the car when no one's with you. You scream out in the forest, right? Like whatever the thing is that like however you need to process, maybe it's dancing, right? It's like, hey, okay, my kids are here and I can't have time alone, so like let's have a dance party because through that movement, through that expression is going to help move the energy of the disappointment, of maybe the anger, of the sadness, of the whatever is coming up to get to flow. And so it's allowing ourselves again to give to ourselves in the best possible way that we can in the moment and then set up, okay, what can I do the next day, the next week, the next whatever, so that I can have whatever it is that I'm needing to have. Is there somebody who can maybe watch the kids so that I can have like a night or a few hours to myself to just be in the energy and the word that keeps coming to mind is mess, right? That might feel like a mess. Like just allowing myself to be with it, to see what is needing to emerge or is wanting to emerge or I'm getting too attached to that I need to detach from. And why am I getting so attached to this thing? And how can I let myself be more open palm with it, right? And stop gripping it so much. Like what is going on? Because that's also part of it, right? Is being able to see the patterns, see the cycles, see the ups and downs and why we are disappointed, right? Why we had the expectation in the first place why we were, setting ourselves up for something that um, we knew could be a loss, right? And why is it hitting us so deeply? Or why does it not hit us so deeply, right? Like allowing ourselves to go deeper into the experience to understand what's happening so that we can see the bigger picture at play, right? We can see what's happening under the surface because it's likely not the thing itself. There's a deeper part to the disappointment that like we need to dig into. Like for example, the moving thing, right? It's been like so many years. The moving thing because for me, a part of the moving feels like my life gets to start again. I get to set down roots. I get to have my stuff. I don't, all my stuff, most of my stuff, I can't say all my stuff, but most of my stuff, 90% of my stuff is in storage in California because I said, well, I might as well just like keep it here until I know where I'm going because I don't have a place to put it where I'm going in Oregon. So, like, why move it just to put it in storage here? Like, let's just leave it there. And then in a few months, I'll move it. And it's been almost 6 years, right? And so that attachment of like my life, when I move, my life gets to start again is like, okay, well, how helpful is that? And how has that stopped other things from happening? Or, all these other things. And so, right, it gives us this opportunity to get to see what's maybe at the deeper core of the disappointment. And also get to say and decide, like, we don't always get to decide when things are going to work out for us, right? If our business is going to thrive, if it's going to go viral, if it's going to do all these things, right? For me, I really see that there's this bigger picture at play. Yes, we can always force things, right? So this is not me saying you can't have success when you do all the things or whatever. Like, of course. And if you're following your intuition, your nudges, you're doing the healing, you're doing the things, and things still aren't really flowing the way that you were expecting them to, or you were told they would if you did XYZ, or, all the things, that there's this bigger picture at play. There's this divine timing. There's this your path that's at play that you don't really get to supersede when you're following your path, right? So you can get off your path and say, well, I'm going to make this happen. And so I'm going to, do all these things that don't maybe feel great to me, but like I have to do them in order to get to XYZ. And there's nothing to say that you won't. And if you are someone who, is like, I'm following the path and I'm trusting the path and like I'm only doing the things that resonate, and, whether that's in alignment or not, because I might find out after the fact it actually was misaligned and I was, protecting myself from being out of my comfort zone, or um, from doing, whatever the thing is, that I lost my train of thought. But it all comes back to like divine timing, right? And that sometimes, right? Sometimes you don't have to be fully healed in different aspects before you become, you know, viral and famous and wealthy and for all those things, right? And I'm still speaking about like business, right? Um, that you don't have to, right? There's so many people that become super like viral right off the bat and then have to learn and heal along the way. And then there's some people that do all the heal, not all of it. We never do all of it. But when we do, do a lot of the healing, and still that's not like something that is coming into your fruition. And because, right, there's this bigger thing at play. There's our own life path at play. And so there can be so much disappointment that comes within that itself as well. And so, again, why it's so important to then come back to ourselves and say, what is it that I need in order to feel the most supported right now? Because it's not always going to be people, right? Sometimes seeking people can be more damaging to the disappointment than bringing you out of it or helping you step through it. So it's not always going to be seeking out others for support. Sometimes it's seeking self. Sometimes it's, pulling cards to see like, okay, is there a message I'm not hearing that like I need somebody to tell me, right? And then the cards, maybe depending on what cards you feel called to, whether they're oracle cards or tarot cards, that a message gets to come through there. Or it's connecting to yourself, connecting to your guides and asking them like, hey, what's happening? Tell me. And maybe you get upset with them. Maybe I'm speaking from experience of, you know, uh, I know they don't understand time to the same extent that we experience time because it's not same. And so, the amount of times I've heard, just keep going or it's almost here is sometimes really infuriating because it's like, what does that mean? And like, how much longer? And I am such an Aries and a projector. And like, I want to know. Like, let's plan this out. And uncertainty can be so hard for me, which is why it's been such a big part of my lesson. And so, right, like it doesn't, so seeking out the answer or, the message, not the answers, the message Doesn't mean it will always soothe soothe you the way that you maybe feel like you need to be soothed, and yet it's going to give you the message that you're needing and will seed it so that when you are ready for it, you're able to then look at it. Right? Going for a walk in nature is always a nice way, grounding. I think I'll be doing an episode on grounding. Um, However that looks for you, right? Could be something taking a bath, could be something taking a sauna. I love a good sauna. Or if you're into cold plunging, not my jam, but if you're into cold plunging, right? Like working out, there's endless ways, which is why this is not an episode about how to deal with disappointment. It is, and it is in the sense of connecting to self to allow self to tell you how and what you need to feel supported through that disappointment. It could be journaling. It could be connecting with your animal. It could be going for a ride, right? If you have horses or a bike or a forerunner or, insert next thing here. There's, again, like I said, there's endless things and it's so personal to you, which is why this can't be do this thing in order to get this result because it's so determined on you. It's so dependent on you. So, if you're somebody who's been walking through disappointment or in the midst of it at the moment, take some time to really come back to you and ask yourself whether that's through free writing. If you're like, I'm not connected to myself in that way, then I suggest free writing. I feel like it's such it's one of the okay, I don't actually want to say that because I don't know that it's actually true. I was going to say it's one of the easiest, but I don't know that that's necessarily true for everyone. But free writing is essentially, asking a question. So you could say, and you could write it or you could say it. You could say it in your head. You could say it out loud. You can, intend that you're being connected to a guide. And you could say, like, what is the message I'm missing? And then just write whatever comes through. Whatever comes through your mind, whatever comes through, it all gets written down until it's empty. There's nothing else left. And then just see what happens. I also recommend I mean they're called morning pages, but you don't have to do them in the morning. There's a book called The Artist's Way. Actually, I've never read it, but I know this technique. And I do recommend it because for me it really brought a lot of clarity at different times. But morning pages are essentially, you take your journal and you say, okay, for the next like these 3 pages, I'm going to keep writing until the 3 pages are full. So you might be like writing, I don't know what to write. This is dumb. I don't know why I'm still doing this. Like, what am I supposed to say for the next 3 pages? I don't have anything to say. Oh my gosh, this is going to take forever. And then all of a sudden, as you're like writing all these things, because you don't take your pen off the page until you complete the 3 pages or, however many you said, that things then start to flow. And you're like, oh, that wasn't even something I was thinking about. And like, oh, isn't that interesting? And so just really allowing yourself to go down that path in whatever way it is needing. And so, again, morning pages could be really helpful if you're not connected in that way. Again, pulling cards can be nice because it's this more tangible or, outside of yourself thing. A pendulum could be helpful. If you're into dowsing rods, that could be something that you could, ask yes, no questions. It's very similar to a pendulum. Um, right. There's just so many ways. There's so many ways, but allowing ourselves to come back to self to say, what is it that I need to feel soothed right now is what is you are going to need to feel soothed right now. Right. I can't tell you that. I can give you options, but only you can say, this is actually what I need. And what a gift that we can give ourselves to say, this is what I need. Right. And like advocate for ourselves to ourselves. I mean, one of the best gifts that we can give ourselves. So, hopefully, something along this whole thing was helpful. um, and hopefully, I stayed in somewhat of a line to understand it. And yeah, if you also are, walking through it, I'm sending you so much love because I feel you. I feel you on so many levels. And also, we're ending we're coming up to the close of the universal 9 year, which is all about endings, right? And shedding and letting go of the things that are no longer serving us. And so, likely, there are many of us that are feeling some kind of disappointment, sadness, loss during this time because of the energy in which we are living in. And so, giving yourself also the grace of saying, okay, what is it that I need to feel the lightest, the most supported, the most protected right now? So, all right. I hope all is well in your world, and I will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.